And that is what I will continue to do in the days and weeks ahead. I will do everything in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump and his extreme Project 2025 agenda. It should be noted, we now just have 107 days until Election Day. And so Kamala Harris says, together we will fight and together we will win. Now, the president is at home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, this weekend recovering from COVID. He is expected to address the nation later this week. He's the first president since Lyndon Johnson in 1968 to decline to seek a second term. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is at the White House. And Nancy, what do we know about how the president came to this historic decision?
Well, he came to this decision within the past 24 hours. It has been days, if not weeks, of White House officials from the president on down insisting that he was in it to win it, that he was tuning out the doubters, and that he was going to win this race. Until this morning, when we started to get word that potentially he had a change of heart. Right around 2 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon, he made it official in an announcement to the American people. We're told that just a few minutes before that, he told his senior advisors. Before that, though, holed up in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. He was there with just a few members of his inner circle, including his deputy chief of staff, his longtime right-hand woman, Annie Tomasini, two of his longtime senior advisors, Mike Donnellan and Steve Rischetti. All those doubters, it appears, just got too loud, and he started to have a change of heart. After he told the American people that he had decided to bow out of the race, he threw his support behind Vice President Harris. We got word, Nora, from the president's brother earlier today saying that the president's health, he believes, was a factor in his decision. But just a short time ago, I heard from a source close to the Biden family, and they said that Frank Biden, the president's younger brother, is an alcoholic, that he hasn't spoken to the president in weeks, and that the president's health had nothing to do with his decision to leave the race.
Nancy Cordes at the White House with that information. Nancy, thank you. Congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is here with us as well. And shortly after President Biden endorsed his vice president, we heard from a number of prominent Democrats. Scott, is the Democratic Party coalescing behind Kamala Harris?
A big chunk already has. She picked up a block of Senate endorsements and picked them up quickly, nearly 24 by our CBS News count. And it's some of the lions of the U.S. Senate. Patty Murray, third in the line of presidential succession. She chairs the Appropriations Committee. Mark Warner of Virginia chairs the Intelligence Committee. Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has her finger on the pulse of the progressive wing of the caucus. And then all the House groups, Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, and from some of the other names we've heard associated with potential candidacies, including Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. And there on the screen, some of those members of the House January 6th committee who spent so much time investigating 2020 and the efforts of Donald Trump to overturn the election. And if this all sounds familiar, this broad base of voices in the Democratic Party, it was a broad base of voices in the Democratic Party calling on President Biden to withdraw. This, in a way, has unified an often fractious Democratic caucus.
So much has changed in just a short period of time. Scott MacFarlane, thank you so much. Want to bring in John Dickerson, who joins us now. And John, it's hard to overstate what a seismic event this is. How does this change the contours of this presidential race?
Oof. Well, we're still figuring that all out, Nora. I mean, one of the ways is, first, the Democratic Party has to figure out how to get unified. They have to go through that series of issues. And we've been talking about the timeline. You mentioned LBJ. You know, when Johnson dropped out in 1968, he wasn't essentially the party nominee. I mean, Joe Biden is the nominee, which means the entire Democratic process made him the party nominee. To unwind that means taking care of some sensitivities and bruised feelings that might be out there as a way to get the party unified to then go forward. So the first big task is staying unified, and the second is figuring out how to take the fight to Donald Trump. Democrats are terrified that basically since the first debate, the only debate, 27th of June, they've been losing ground to Donald Trump, not able to take the case to him. The Republicans just emerged from their convention highly unified. When can the Democratic ticket form itself? which means, of course, that crucial vice presidential decision. But then when can it start prosecuting the case against Donald Trump, which it has not been able to do basically since the end of June?
John Dickerson, thank you. I want to bring in Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan. And Margaret, if Kamala Harris secures the Democratic nomination, she would be the first woman of color to become a major party presidential nominee. How does this change the substance of this race, the discussion of the issues that are before the American people?
Well, Democrats have argued that they have the policy position to win, even if they didn't have the energy and the unity. Well, now they can try to bring all together, and with Kamala Harris as vice president, put reproductive health care as the top issue that she has been the messenger on for Joe Biden, who is not comfortable messaging around that because of his personal beliefs about abortion. He's made that clear. She will put that at the fore and be able to talk about it in a compelling way against a candidate who celebrates having put justices on the court who overturned Roe versus Wade, even though Donald Trump's current position is that he sent it back to the states. She will bring that front and center. She can also help to perhaps get a second look for some Democrats in key states like Michigan, where there had been concern in particular about the president's perceived lack of empathy in terms of the loss of Palestinian life. We've seen in our CBS polling that this extends beyond Arab and Muslim voters. It was very resonant with black voters in particular. And she has been able to have a softer message, a more humanitarian message on that front. That would also be front and center. By the way, she's also 59 years old. So in that conversation about generational change, she can say she is that. There are a lot of negatives that you will hear some of her critics outlay in the next few days, including some people who may want to challenge her in the coming days. But that's the case that Democrats hope will be a winning one, that she can lean into those more progressive platform issues for the party.
And Margaret, we are just hearing from Jill Biden's spokesperson that she was supportive, whatever road he chose, that she's always been his biggest believer, champion, and always on his side. And they're some 50 years together. But this is obviously painful for the entire Biden family.
It has to be. And we've seen messages, including from Hunter Biden, President Biden's surviving son, who has been very much in a harsh spotlight because of his legal troubles. Remember his case that just in the month of June, one of the issues that had to have weighed on Joe Biden as a father, to see his son convicted in regard to gun charges, who also faces charges in September. Those don't all go away, but perhaps the shifting here and the conversations with the family, all of that has to have weighed on him. And it is interesting as he puts really front and center his family so often, 50-year spouse, saying she stood by him.
Margaret Brennan, thank you. I want to bring in Robert Costa. And Robert, a lot of the discussion is about Joe Biden and his legacy, protecting that legacy. That's in part, I think, why he chose not to seek re-election. He is throwing his weight behind his vice president, Kamala Harris. But is it clear tonight that she has the nomination? Who else may jump in?
We're looking at a Democratic Party that's convulsing tonight. Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who just registered as an independent, a longtime centrist Democrat. CBS News has now learned he is considering re-registering as a member of the Democratic Party to consider standing for the Democratic presidential nomination, in effect challenging Vice President Harris for that nomination. He has not made a final decision based on our conversations with people close to him, but he is considering it tonight. He's talking to donors. He's talking to party officials. His consideration underscores how some Democrats are nervous about Vice President Harris's ability to beat former President Donald Trump, who I just spoke with about an hour or two ago. He told CBS News that he's prepared to have a political onslaught against Vice President Harris or whomever emerges as the nominee. I asked him, are you ready to debate Vice President Harris? He says, not at all, because I'm not even sure I'm going to be running against her. Let's see what happens.
And Nora, just to give you a sense of how fast moving this is, Senator Joe Manchin was on Face the Nation at 10:30 this morning and said, it's time for a new generation. Forget about me. Between 10:30 a.m. this morning and now, there is a reconsideration.
That's like a month ago in politics, Margaret.
That's right. Well, so much has changed just today. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang, because she is outside the vice president's residence. And Weijia, what do we know about what the vice president is doing at this hour?
Well, Nora, we know that she is in Washington, D.C., of course, but we have not seen her in public at all today. She spoke with President Biden earlier when he called her before he made the big announcement. They had a private conversation, and then she spent the day reaching out to members of Congress, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. And, of course, we just saw in the past week how powerful these congressional leaders can be, and she certainly knows that, having served in the Senate. So she made immediate direct outreach to them to try to shore up support. And, you know, she has been talking to advisors, too, to try to process all of this and to try to answer the million-dollar question that everybody wants to know, which is, who is she going to pick as a running mate? And, you know, that question is really, who can bring something to the ticket that she cannot? Who can bring what Joe Biden could? Of course, there's huge overlap there. And who can offer something to those voters in the critical battleground states that will likely determine this race? And so there have been many names that have already emerged, Nora, including Democratic governors of Roy Cooper of North Carolina. We should point out that they just stumped together on the trail in Fayetteville, North Carolina this past week. Andy Beshear of Kentucky, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who she also spoke with today, according to an aide. But she could also pick somebody in the Biden cabinet, because she is not only running on her personal record, she is running on the record of the Biden-Harris administration. So if you were to choose a secretary, Pete Buttigieg, Gina Raimondo, these are people who have already been out spending the better part of the past year campaigning for President Biden. And so today, the team says there's no timeline, no discussions in public about when she might choose. But of course, Nora, we know it has to be soon.
Weijia Jiang, outside the vice president's residence, thank you very much. Want to bring in Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. He serves on the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You said the clock was ticking for President Biden to reassure voters. Your reaction tonight to what has happened?
Well, this is an extraordinary moment. It's a moment where we are watching a true American patriot, somebody that has given his entire life to this country, make an incredibly selfless decision. He knows that the number one priority is beating Donald Trump, and Joe Biden made the decision tonight that Kamala Harris has the best chance of being able to rescue our democracy from potential doom if Donald Trump becomes president. It's a hard decision for President Biden. Why? Because arguably he's the most successful president of our lifetime, rescuing this country from the pandemic, passing legislation that nobody thought was possible until Joe Biden was president, the biggest infrastructure investment in the country's history, the first gun bill of any consequence in 30 years. Inarguably, he has had a really remarkable record of legislative success. And so to walk away from that is very, very difficult. But there were and are a lot of voters who were looking for the torch to be passed to a new generation. I think they're going to be very excited by Kamala Harris, somebody that I've served with, somebody who I am eager and enthusiastic to support. And I think it's remarkable tonight that you have seen such a rush of support to her just hours after this announcement, which, by the way, was not previewed to any members of the Senate or governors. You saw this organic growth of support for her. I think, as you mentioned, about half of my colleagues in the Senate have already endorsed her. That didn't come through any coordinated effort. That came because we just all know her, and we think that she's going to be a tremendous commander-in-chief.
So, Senator, you believe that the Democratic Party is coalescing behind the vice president, and she will not face any significant challenge?
Well, it's too early to know whether there will be any challenge to her, but I see right now a pretty remarkable building of support for the vice president. She is ready to do this job. She has been side by side with President Biden, a big part of his successes. I've traveled with her around the world. I've seen how she has helped reshape America's image around the world in the wake of the destruction that was done to it by Donald Trump. So I'm pretty confident tonight that she's going to be our nominee. I think we would be better off as a party if we were able to get behind her. But obviously it's early moments, so time will tell if she's the only candidate.
Senator, how do you hope that Vice President Harris will prosecute the case against Donald Trump?
Well, she is a prosecutor. And so this is a pretty clear contrast. A prosecutor running against a felon. Kamala Harris, who as California's Attorney General and Senator and Vice President has stood up to the big banks in the billionaire class, Donald Trump, who promises in his second term to give another massive tax break to those same people. Kamala Harris, who's spent her career trying to bring people together, trying to heal divisions. Donald Trump, who's continuing to divide us. I think she is going to be an incredibly effective messenger. I think even during this very tough time, these last few weeks when people were watching her more carefully than ever, she was at her best. And so I think that tells you that when the moment comes, when the stakes get the highest, Kamala Harris is at her best. I think this country is going to be really interested, I think really surprised at the Kamala Harris that they're going to meet over the course of the next several weeks and months.
Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ahead, a closer look at President Biden's storied career in politics and the legacy he'll leave behind.
Introducing Nature's Own Keto Buns, saving the keto world one bun at a time.
The desk is this innovative new design concept that we have that allows us to bring the viewers one step closer to what we're doing to uncover, discover, and bring you the news.
And I'm actually tracking one right here. We're going to present that data to you directly. No filters, the raw, accurate information of what's happening in Los Angeles.
Suspect down.
Listen, I need to send you a crime scene that's developing right now.
I love it. I think it's a way that we can bring viewers something that they haven't seen before on the news.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Ready, set, go!
All right. Okay, let's go.
Let's just start at the beginning.
The clock, it's ticking.
Did they prevent justice?
You're not answering my question.
They lied? What is at stake?
That's a great question.
Great question.
What kind of needs are you sensing here?
You want to start in alphabetical order or numerical?
You don't want to talk
okay,
about
fine,
what I do.
fine. Never mind. I don't care.
Wow, this is really, really hot. How fast do you think you would go?
You think that Mr. Putin's responsible?
I'm sure that he's responsible.
Are you safe here?
Are you ready for some tough questions?
It's the highest inflation rate, Mr. President, in 40 years.
I view it as a significant challenge.
Why won't you say the word crisis?
Whoa! See it? It's right here.
What's the likelihood you and I have been hacked by China?
110%.
How close did you actually come to being killed?
That close.
This generation of robots is going to be different.
That's a hell of a way to get into a country.
It seems unbelievable.
This is mind-blowing.
Breathtaking.
It's time for the new season of the CBS News original.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright shiny faces.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Put me in the game, coach.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
The best interviews feel like it's just a conversation with a neighbor.
Hey.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask a question that is the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'll see you in the morning.
Your age makes the choice of your vice president all the more important. Why do you think Senator Harris would be ready to step in and become commander-in-chief if something were to happen to you?
Number one, her values. Number two, she is smart as a devil. Number three, she has a backbone like a ramrod. Number four, she is really principled. And number five, She has had significant experience in the largest state in the union, running the Justice Department. It's only second in size to the United States Justice Department. And, obviously, I hope that never becomes a question.
That was from my 60 Minutes interview with then-candidate Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2020, laying out why he says Harris was the right choice for VP. Biden's career goes back more than 50 years to 1972 when he was elected as one of the youngest senators. CBS's Major Garrett has a look back.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
Joe Biden's presidency began on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, where only days before, America bore witness to insurrection.
We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities.
The day before he was inaugurated, Biden marked 400,000 U.S. COVID-19 deaths. Less than 5 weeks later, he mourned 500,000 American casualties.
That's more lives lost to this virus than any other nation on earth.
Biden's gesture illustrated an unadorned empathy that flowed through his entire political life, an emotive approach that seemed to fit a fitful time.
To heal, we must remember. It's hard sometimes to remember, but that's how we heal.
Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. was born in 1942. When the economy collapsed in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and his father lost his job, the Bidens moved to Delaware.
My dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up.
Biden played football at the University of Delaware and attended law school at Syracuse University. By 1972,
if you like what you see, help me out. If not, vote for the other fellow.
He was elected to the United States Senate as a long shot, tell it like it is, 29-year-old.
I think one of the reasons I won is they have more confidence in me than with other people that I will say what I think.
Weeks later, his wife Nelia and their daughter were killed in a traffic accident that also injured sons Beau and Hunter.
I felt like a piece of me died.
Biden took the oath of office in a hospital. A single-father senator, Biden commuted from Wilmington to Washington aboard Amtrak to be home with his kids at night. He met Jill Jacobs, a teacher, on a blind date in 1975. They married 2 years later.
Everyone knows I love her more than she loves me.
My name is Joe Biden. I want to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
He ran for president in 1987, but dropped out after being accused of plagiarism. A year later, he suffered 2 brain aneurysms, but would later write he had no fear of dying.
Judge Thomas.
Biden chaired the Clarence Thomas Supreme Court confirmation hearing in 1991, and during the 2020 campaign, he apologized to Anita Hill, who accused Thomas of sexual harassment, but faced scrutiny and hostility.
To this day, I regret I couldn't come up with a way to get her the kind of hearing she deserved.
He drafted the 1994 crime bill. It pushed crime down, but incarceration rates up.
Hi, Penny. I'm Joe Biden, running for president.
His 2008 White House campaign went nowhere.
The vast majority of the people in Iowa haven't made up their mind yet.
When they did,
Joe Biden!
Barack Obama named Biden his running mate. In the White House, Biden oversaw stimulus spending and jumped ahead of the president by endorsing gay marriage.
What this is all about is a simple proposition. Who do you love?
Biden told President Obama to wait for better confirmation before launching the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Memorably, he said this about the passage of Obamacare. Biden was known for verbal gaffes, some innocent.
We choose truth over facts.
Others less so.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
Biden passed on another run for the presidency in 2016 after his son Beau died of brain cancer. In 2020, he finished 4th in Iowa, 5th in New Hampshire, but bounced back to win South Carolina.
So all those who have been knocked down, counted out, left behind, let me say to you, this is your campaign.
For months, as the pandemic worsened, Biden stumped virtually from his basement.
This is a war against this virus. Let me introduce to you.
Biden made history by picking California Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, the first woman of color nominated by a major party.
Kamala knows how to govern. She knows how to make the hard calls. She's ready to do this job on day one.
That November, Biden defeated President Trump by 7 million votes, and he brushed aside Mr. Trump's false claims of fraud and prepared to bring the pandemic to heel. In his first 100 days, Mr. Biden accelerated vaccine distribution and strong-armed a $2 trillion COVID relief plan through a Congress with slender Democratic majorities. Mr. Biden, the first pre-baby boom president since 1993, approached the nation as a soft-spoken healer, but governed more progressively even than President Obama. A career politician soaked in Washington for some 50 years, Mr. Biden made his presidency a transition between the nation's older, racially calloused past and its softer, youthful, and more inclusive future.
We have shown each other and the world that there's no quit in America. None. The Honorable Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Biden appointed the first black woman to the Supreme Court.
Okay, here we go.
And signed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill into law.
Bravo.
However, a chaotic withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan
on the hillside here in Riverside, Geo.
And you notice as well, firefighters at the top of your screen working to contain these flames as fast as possible. You see the streams of water coming up right there in the center of your screen now. And of course, we've moved forward a little bit, and there is the fire truck, more first responders trying to get a hold of the situation. The other thing that you notice in this brush fire is just how much surrounds it. Like you see,
Biden frequently embraced optimism for America, and at times it sounded like his own internal fight against those who bet against him.
We are the United States of America, and there's
Large home, possibly considered really a mansion, a multi-million-dollar home most likely in these areas. You can see just how large the other homes are here. These are in remote areas. A lot of these homes, there's not many of them, but there is an entire neighborhood you can see that sits just behind this. Interestingly, though, the only real fire we're seeing burning in this area is that home. That's where we're seeing those flames. Aside from that, you can see the rest of this area smoldering, but that's just a reminder that even though you don't see those flames, it does not mean that they are not active. You can see the flames there in that distance. This is a rather large fire. We're looking at a pretty big distance here, and there are several homes. We're now getting word, Geo, that a second home has also caught fire in this area here in Riverside.
and it also looks like right there at the top of your screen off to the distance in what looks like an open field, you see a car, and perhaps don't know if those are homeowners or just some sort of pedestrians looking around, just trying to catch a glimpse of things. But this really gives you a wider perspective of what's going on right now. You notice that brush fire and the massive homes nearby, the neighborhoods as well. So we know that first home that you saw when we first broke in here on KCAL is engulfed in flames. Another one at least, but look at all the smoke. You see how wide-ranging this is, at least in the moment right now, as we sort of zoom back into the initial home that we first broke in to show you, because those are the most raging flames right now, at least contained to this particular home right now, and firefighters are still working to contain things at the moment. So, of course, working to find out a cause for this as well. Typically, don't know that information right off the bat right now, but we just know that the priority at this moment is making sure that these fires are out, and that, of course, anyone who is in these homes are safe.
Yeah, this now is being dubbed as the Hawarden Fire, burning here in Riverside along the 91 here near Arlington and Alessandro Boulevard. We know so far, firefighters tell us that it has burned more than 500 acres. And Gio, you're mentioning a cause. Normally we don't get that, as you said, rather quickly, but we do know the conditions are hot out there.
Yep.
We're experiencing very hot conditions, especially in the Inland Empire, and also very dry. So this is just a recipe for once this brush and these fires begin, they can then continue to make their way and burn through as much vegetation as possible. And you can see in this area, there is a lot of vegetation to burn through as you're looking at some flames there burning along that fire line.
Because all it takes is, of course, some wind to move those flames, and then you notice anything can catch fire and then spread from there on out. And I remember when we were talking to Olga at this point yesterday, we were asking, when does that relief come with those hot temperatures, those triple-digit temperatures that we're seeing in some spots, particularly in the Inland Empire? And on that note, as we wrap up, one quick thought here with regards to the weather. You know, the forecast, and not going to see that extended relief anytime soon, at least through the rest of this week, going to be dealing with those hot temperatures.
Yeah, we do want to get to Ryan Rails, PIO over at Riverside Police. Ryan Railsback, PIO with Riverside Police. Do you hear me, officer?
Yes, I can.
Can you tell us anything about evacuations at this moment right now in this area?
We do have some evacuations going on still. They're being handled by our police officers out there at the scene. Our care and receive place for evacuees is at our Orange Terrace Community Center up in our Orange Crest neighborhood nearby.
Do you know how many homes or what areas are currently under evacuation?
Right now, we have a couple different areas on both sides of where the fire is, kind of along our couple side streets off of Overlook Parkway, but also off of Hawarden Drive as well. There's a couple side streets over there where we have some evacuations going on. The fire is at about 230 acres right now with 0% containment. But fortunately, we haven't had any injuries out of this fire so far.
That was going to be my follow-up to you, Ryan, was do we know how many people have been affected by this so far? But at least some good news there with regards to no injuries at this moment.
Yeah, I don't have exact numbers on how many houses we've evacuated. We have had several. We do believe that there is some damage to some houses. I don't know how many yet, but we have had some fire damage to a handful of homes out there.
And I know that police is working hand in hand with firefighters, although the fire department is, they have their own operation right now. But do you have any idea of the challenges your crews, I should say, police officers are facing trying to get people out of this area? We're looking at it, and it is pretty remote. You see the fire in this pretty remote hillside here. To get people out, is there only one way in, one way out? Are there multiple ways out at this point? We're taking a look right now at what looks like another home smoldering here, and these homes are rather large.
Yeah, a lot of them are out in that area, but there are plenty of ways in and out of there. So we're not having any issues accessing the homes or getting people out in a safe and quick manner. So we're glad we have that going for us. And, as you can imagine, it is hot, and that large area over there where the fire is going on, a lot of dry wildland. So that's some of the obstacles that our firefighters are having to deal with. But fortunately, these neighborhoods over there, we have plenty of ways in and out that we can get to those homeowners to encourage them to evacuate.
Well, speaking of homeowners and giving them the proper information, we know how important it is this time of the year. Of course, in the thick of fire season, we know these hot temperatures are sticking around at least for a bit. The importance and the significance, rather, of wind, being able to move around these fires as you guys, there's work to contain them. But as we take a look at these large homes from our chopper right now, we notice a lot of, for lack of a better word, available things that could easily catch fire. How significant it is for anyone who's watching as a reminder of defensible space. We use that word often during fire season about making sure that things around your home and around your living space can avoid being caught in this scenario where they could easily spark at a moment's notice.
You're exactly right. That is something that our fire department does constantly encourage our community members that live in these areas that border the hills and the wildland, is to have that defensible space. It's only going to help in situations like this to help lessen that fire, the chances of that fire from or its embers, anything like that, from hitting your property or your home. So you're exactly right with that. And we would hope that going forward, we'd have anybody who's watching these fires right now that evaluate your home. Do you have that defensible space around it?
Yeah, that's a reminder that is constantly being put out by not only law enforcement, but also firefighters there. And it's just a tragic situation right now as we're watching this home, these families' memories really just smolder and burn. It looks like this home half intact here, Gio, but you can really see that smoke coming heavy from that rooftop there. You wonder if the pool in the backyard there will help firefighters. You can see there's some, it looks like water on the rooftop that firefighters are trying to save what they can of this home. Officer Railsback, we know this started around 1:30 in the Hawarden area there. Do you have any idea how that first call came in or who made that first call?
Well, just from some neighbors seeing the fire. And seeing that it was getting close to a home over there. We have a great arson investigations unit with our fire department. They are on scene. And so as soon as this fire starts getting under control, they're going to start looking into what the cause of this and how it was caused and who caused it potentially.
With arson investigators on the scene, is that just typical given any fire at any point that there's a response to, or is there any indication, at least early on? Now, granted, we know that a cause is not typical to be found so early when a fire starts like this, but is that something that's going to be looked into, or is there any indication that that is something that may have caused this fire?
Well, we don't know for sure. One of the calls came in that said it could have been possibly related to fireworks. We don't know, but that's why we have arson investigators there. But again, in the city of Riverside, the county of Riverside, fireworks are illegal all year round, and this is exactly why. If this is the actual cause of the fire, this is exactly why how these fireworks can be so dangerous in high temperatures around dry brush, wildland. This could, something like this is the result of that.
Yeah, and the consequences are absolutely devastating. We're watching more flames creep up rather close to another very large home, and we're seeing an entire neighborhood that this fire is slowly creeping towards. Do you guys have any concern for the neighborhoods closer to the 91 here as we come down the hill? The area gets a little more congested. Is that on your radar right now? Should those people be thinking about packing up their stuff just yet?
No, not right now. As you get more into the neighborhoods, what we're really concerned about is these homes that border the open field and the wildland area right there. We're not too concerned about as we go deeper into the neighborhoods. It's just specifically in this area, these homes that have this these open spaces behind them.
Now, we're also being told that there is another fire worth keeping a track on, and that is a fire burning south of Lake Matthews. It's already prompted some evacuations. Is that on your radar at any point right now? And is there any concern about, one fire here, a fire right in your backyard here, and the threat that could have as the night continues?
Well, that fire there is in the county jurisdiction of Riverside. So CAL FIRE, Riverside County Fire, is handling that. That one, from what I understand, started yesterday. And over in that area, it's all empty land. I don't believe there's any fear or threat to structures over there. And I don't know the updates on that, but CAL FIRE is handling that one. Yesterday, they did have some air assets over there on that one. I don't believe they had any out there today.
We are seeing some retardant there, what looks like on the ground with that fire, but we're not seeing, have you, Gio, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, I have not seen any air resources out there. Officer Railsback, are there air resources currently making drops on the fire where you're at?
I don't know if we have any currently. We did earlier, and air assets were called in. But I don't know or believe that they're there on scene as of this moment. It doesn't mean that they won't be called back, but we did have at least one out there earlier.
With all of these homes that we've been taking a look at so far in this community, obviously there's been a mention of how large they are. They seem to be isolating, may not be the right word, but because they take up so much space, they're almost individualized as we get a closer look at these flames right next to the retardant that was dropped. But does that make the situation in terms of a response more difficult because there's such large spaces, or does it in a way make it easier because there's not so much surrounding them, so to speak, in terms of other homes or other people? Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah, that might be more of a question for the fire experts.
Okay.
But yeah, this space is really, if you're looking at it, it is surrounded by homes, by roads, things like that. So the fire can only go so far. Of course, we're doing the fire department's doing everything they can with structure protection.
Officer
We don't want
Railsback,
this fire to.
I don't want to cut you off here, but we're looking at what looks like a person, not a firefighter, trying to kind of dig a fire line. They're rather close to these flames right now. And it looks like he is trying to dig what would be a fire line, something to get those flames to slow their progress here and pick up some of the brush that is in that area using a rake. How dangerous can this be? And what is your message to people who, admittedly are trying to possibly save their property?
Well, when we have evacuation orders in place, we want people to evacuate, but we completely understand someone's trying to, save or defend their home. We had people earlier that were out there with their hoses, trying to water down their roofs or any parts of their property as the fire was getting closer. So we completely understand. We don't want them to put their own lives in danger, though. So we do have a lot of fire resources out there. And, if it's something that our fire professionals can handle, we prefer them to do it.
Yeah, to paint that picture a little bit more, that person we seemingly saw, again, don't know if that was the homeowner, but there was a home directly next to those flames. It was the closest one, in fact. It was just one complex, a very large home, a tennis court, but then as we zoomed out and got a better picture of the land, there wasn't really anything else. So it very well could be someone who's doing their best to try to protect their property. Now we're zoomed into another one, another home here, and it looks like some folks in the backyard taking a look at flames.
Yeah, it looks like they actually have a water hose. I could see some water spraying there in the background. And I'm getting word right now from Mike Rogers on our assignment desk, who is working overtime while off work right now. And he says he was looking at the radar there, and it looks like there are, he's saying, few air resources right now, only because they are pretty spread out throughout the Riverside Inland Empire area. He said some are down at the other fire in Lake Matthews that we were just talking about, the Eagle Fire. And he says some are up near Running Springs. So that might be why we're not seeing the air resources right now. Gio, it looks like we did see some of that fire retardant there on the ground.
Yes.
Looks like the fire and the air resources were there, but at this hour we have not seen any. And we know that they are dealing with several fires in this area. That one right near Lake Matthews, not far from this area as well. But what's really hard to watch is we're watching these flames just creep closer and closer to more homes. And if I'm counting right now, we're seeing 3 different homes, maybe 4 now, fully engulfed. Another one right here on the hillside.
And obviously that was the concern as we first popped on with the number of homes and the number of people keeping an eye on their property. Officer Railsback, if I want to bring you back in here, I want to ask, because earlier you mentioned when we first started talking that some evacuations are being handled right now by officers, but what does the process look like in terms of, let's say this hopefully doesn't get worse, but let's say it does, how does the moment change for you guys in terms of issuing more evacuation orders? What does it take for you to take that next step and tell people, okay, let's get going?
Well, as the fire's creeping up on their home, the fire department is telling our officers, we need these homes here evacuated. And so we're going to make contact with whoever's home and really highly encourage them, persuade them to leave. Grab whatever they can really quick and leave for a safe place or our kind of evacuation center. We would hope that they, hearing the news, we've been putting out social media and alerts that they would start looking, if they live in that area, start preparing just in case. There's nothing wrong with being prepared, so that way if they need to go, they have small animals, they can grab them, their family members, get in a car and let the fire department protect their property.
And on that note, for anyone watching at home right now, we're pulling up a map alongside the live footage from SkyCal right now as you take a look at that first home, that initial home that we first showed you when we broke in about 15 to 20 minutes ago or so. But this is just one of a larger complex of fires that firefighters are currently dealing with right now in Riverside, the Hawarden Hills area. For the record, I just wanted to, as we wait for our meteorologist Olga Espina to get ready to try and get the meteorologist perspective on just these difficult fire conditions, because that makes it so much harder, as we've been mentioning for a while now. But more than 90 degrees, 95, 96 degrees in Riverside right now, so that highlights just how hot it is there, and not much relief, as we've mentioned before, is going to come today, or really for at least the next few days. So that makes the firefight that much more difficult.
Yeah, and at this point, we are seeing firefighters there on the ground. Our map here does tell us if there's any air resources, and I believe that one hasn't updated here, but I'm seeing at least 2 air resources and maybe another one coming from the airport there. It went away and is now coming back. But we're seeing last update coming from firefighters at 4:10 saying that it was about, I believe, was it 500 acres now? If you can correct me, 501 acres right now in the Hawarden Hills area of Riverside County. We haven't gotten official confirmation of how many homes have caught fire, but as our coverage does continue here, Gio, I would say anywhere between 3 and 4 different homes we have seen caught caught fire here, and you can see that those flames burning there. And you can imagine that that wind is really picking it up. That's why it happens to be so spotty there. But you see those flames that sit in between 4 different homes there. Other people, we have seen people in this area staged by their home, some grabbing water hose. Others, we saw a man who was raking, trying to make a fire line there, getting rather close to those flames there. But you're taking a look now at one of these planes. It looks like it'll make a water drop CAL FIRE, dropping some of that retardant, trying to slow down the progress of the Hawarden fire here in Riverside.
And that was a spot earlier that we saw that one person try and either make a fire line or remove some brush that could be getting closer to a property. We do also want to make note that so far, at least so far, there have been no reports of any injuries, so that's at least some good news there. But yeah, you see that initial line at the top of your screen was where the retardant was first dropped. That second line at the bottom there just dropped here live from SkyCal, but you still notice some flames and lots of vegetation, lots of brush, trees, a lot of things that could easily catch fire, and that's been the real difficult thing for firefighters so far as we've been monitoring this situation, because you have individual homes, large homes, surrounded by green, and that's just the initial thing that you're looking at from SkyCal right now, and that's the big concern, because you're so worried about what could happen when, okay, you've gotten something seemingly under control, but oh wait, there's more along the edges that could pick up and then keep this going.
Do we still have Officer Railsback on the line here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, did you mention that it was the Orange Terrace Community Center where people can go if they need to evacuate? Is that correct?
Yes, our Orange Terrace Community Center. The address is 20100 Orange Terrace Parkway, up in our Orange Crest neighborhood. It's a community center at our large park up there that anyone who's been evacuated, we have folks from the city up there to receive for them and provide them any necessities they need at the moment.
And I know for a lot of people probably wondering, does that include animals as well?
Well, they can take their small animals with them wherever they need, and then we'll go from there on whatever resources they may have. These properties over there aren't ones that you're going to have, maybe in the Lake Matthews area where you could have some ranch-style homes that have horses or livestock. You're not going to see that in the Hawarden area.
On that note, Officer Railsback, we're going to chime in with our meteorologist, Olga Espina, who is ready to go and sort of get that meteorological perspective as to what's going on. Olga, I just want to make sure you can hear us, and also the fact that we were bringing up before, you mentioned that these hot temperatures, these tough firefighting conditions are going to keep going, not just for today, but it's going to be a little bit before we get some sort of relief.
It's still going to be most of the upcoming work week that we're still going to be dealing with these types of conditions. So Riverside in particular is under a heat advisory, and that still continues through at least the middle of the week through Wednesday. So yes, we will continue with these types of conditions. I want to show you also our wind gusts, because you can see right there we have winds right now from the west at 12 miles per hour, but gusts even stronger at 23 miles per hour. They're coming from the west, so any area to the east of that, you could be seeing some smoke, you could be experiencing some air quality issues in that area. And temperatures right now, it is extremely hot. It is still in the mid 90s. Inland Empire, one of those really hot locations, and this will continue to be a threat as we continue into the next several days. So we have the hot temperatures, mid 90s. It was even hotter earlier this afternoon, and we have those moderate wind gusts as well. So that is certainly something to keep an eye on, and not just for the Inland Empire, not just for Riverside, but we continue with this elevated fire threat really throughout much of Southern California, especially out through some of our desert locations, through our mountains, through those mountain passes. We'll continue to see the threat as we continue into this new work week.
Olga, thank you so much. Currently, they're battling several wildfires here in the Inland Empire area. Right now, we're looking at the Hawarden fire burning in the Hawarden Hills area just south of the 91 freeway here in Riverside, the city of Riverside. And you can see there are firefighters that are tending to a home here where the roof is fully engulfed there. You see it just smoking, but we know just a few miles away near Corona, near the Lake Matthews area, firefighters also dealing with another large fire burning there. Many resources asked in that area. That has also prompted evacuations.
We also saw some retardant being laid down earlier, just a couple of minutes ago. That was on top of some retardant dropped in the same area. Much before that, before we broke in with this news for you here on KCAL, it's just a lot going on at the moment as we zoom out and you take a look at this live footage. That's just one home that's dealing with these ongoing flames. You notice at the top of your screen, more smoke billowing from this home. This was the one that we initially broke into and first showed you, but it's just one of many properties in the area. Notice that black smoke, lots of flames still going, and the fire hoses going off at the top of your screen there. Those have been for almost half an hour now, still going as they try to contain these flames because there's so much going on, not just loss of property, but of course the fire danger and the fire concerns as this continues to spread. Started around 1:30, now up to at least 500 acres or so at last check, 0% containment. So it's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on as the night continues because there's a lot going on. But important to note, as we were talking with Officer Ryan Railsback earlier, that no reports of injuries, that's some good news there. But also for anyone who has been evacuated or needs to go and get some help, the Orange Terrace Community Center on Orange Terrace Parkway, that's where we were told that anyone can go there who has been evacuated, get some help, can take small animals with them as well. And it's a lot going on right now because it seems like it's different homes, properties. Loss of all of that is a lot to deal with, especially in a situation that's not entirely wrapped up right now.
And what's difficult about this firefight here is we're looking at another possibly retardant drop here in this area by CAL FIRE Air Resources here, is that we're seeing many different spots burning, Gio. This is not all contained to one area. This is a rather large area, and we're seeing different homes in different areas starting to burn, meaning this fire is moving and making forward progress on all ends, not just one end. And so far, with just us counting in our coverage here, it looks like maybe 3 to 4 homes may have caught fire.
And the other thing that you pointed out earlier that's important to note is that retardants being dropped right now live, you're looking at it from SkyCal, is that it's not just these individual very large homes and estates that are dealing with the situation, but the concern then develops into something where on that really wide shot we saw earlier, that those other neighborhoods, the more congested neighborhoods down closer to the bottom of your screen, and other spots, because you have to be on alert, especially in a situation like this where there's 0% containment and you don't know where exactly that fire could go or could spread to.
Yeah, and you see it's spread through a very large area through this community that pretty much runs along this hillside here along the 91 in Riverside. You could see right in the middle, we're seeing that bright glow of what looks like flames. Once again, another home that we saw catch fire there.
These are
and
much more intense than what we saw earlier.
This is an intense firefight. I don't see any fire resources. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not seeing any firefighters here. It looks like this home pretty standalone, but take a look at just how much brush sits alongside it. None of that looks like it has burned, but it looks like it takes just one ember to reach a home or reach the roof, get stuck along that roof, and the whole thing, no matter how big or small, can just light up. And that's what we're seeing happening right now here in Riverside.
Especially given the wind gusts that Olga was pointing out just a couple minutes ago in that quick forecast, where temperatures up here in Riverside, mid-90s right now, so it is steaming, on top of the fact that any gust of wind, consistent wind, anything like that is going to take those flames and move them to any of the susceptible areas that you're seeing, particularly around that one complex, that one area. You notice just how much is burned around it, but that is significant considering there's more plumes of smoke to the bottom right. This is the fire I believe that we are panning to right now, the one in the Lake Matthews area that it's already prompted evacuations, but earlier there was a mention that it doesn't seem to be in an area where a lot of folks are at, so that's not a big, terrible concern at the moment, but of course that's something else that you have to manage and keep an eye on.
Resources.
Exactly.
Your resources are now sent over here. I think it would be helpful that these are rather close together. So if you have air resources, they can make drops at both continuously, but they can only hold so much retardant before they have to refuel and get more. You do have the Lake Matthews area. You have Lake Matthews, I should say, where you could possibly get water if you need to make those water drops. I haven't seen any water drops in this area just yet, but you can see just how fast these flames are just raging up this hillside here. And as you mentioned, this is a very remote area. I've driven through here. This is a shortcut for a lot of people that live in the Inland Empire area. So there is a roadside here, but I can imagine that police, law enforcement, firefighters have all shut down those roads for people, those access roads there. But eventually you will get to some homes in this area, some remote homes that stand alone, much like the other homes we saw. And you can see in this Lake Matthews area, there are several cars there. So we have heard this has prompted some evacuations in this area, as we're also monitoring another fire happening in the city of Riverside, just a few miles away there.
And so what you notice in that fire, as we now pan back toward the Hawarden Hills area of the fire, we've been continuing to monitor as well. You see all those plumes of smoke, everything else that's coming up. On that note, because this is a developing situation, we also know that as you're watching here on KCAL, there is a boatload of breaking news that we have to bring in for you as well, including that major breaking news of